6:35, and I'm calling the meeting to order. If staff will please take roll call.
Tyler Hudgens,
Present.
Ryan Hamilton,
Barely present.
Tyler Jones,
Present.
Peter Shaka. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Having a quorum, we're going to go ahead and move into our administrative items. We'll start with the first one, Redevelopment Commission Powers and Duties Discussion.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Maxwell, and I'm the town clerk. And tonight I'm going to talk to you about what the powers and duties are of the Redevelopment Commission. If I can figure out how to work the computer. That way. All right. On our website, we do have some information that's available to you that you can access that will help you with your powers and duties. And we have a board and commission handbook that we are currently in the process of updating, and that should be completed by the end of this month. And when that's updated on our website, we will send you a link, so you will have that available to you. We also have the bylaws and the code requirements for your commission. There's open meeting materials if you need to access any of that. And we also have the conflict of interest disclosure form if you ever have to recuse yourself from a vote. All right, so we'll talk about your powers and duties. So basically, the Redevelopment Commission is responsible as acting as the design review board for the Heritage District. And there are statutes that determine this, and it's in the Arizona Revised Statutes. And it's under Arizona Title 36, Chapter 12, Article 3. And it's basically 36-1471 to 1491. And that's the section called Slum Clearance and Redevelopment. And that tells what the town can do in this area. And all the powers that the town has, the Redevelopment Commission has, with a few exceptions. You can't borrow money, you can't issue bonds, you can't buy or sell property. But there are, other responsibilities that you do have. You can recommend to the town of Gilbert, to the council, a redevelopment plan and amendment, and they can accept the plan from you. You can review recommendations made by the Planning Commission on proposals to amend the official zoning map, and that's within the Heritage District. You can also approve with modifications, or you can deny applications for design review that are for projects within the Heritage District. You can hear and decide appeals from administrative design review decisions that were made by the Planning Department. You can review and recommend approval to the Town Council for design reviews for the Heritage District overlay. You can review and approve special and conditional use permits. You can approve them, you can approve them with modifications, or you can deny those. You can review and comment to the Planning Commission on appeal of those administrative use permits. And you can review or recommend approval with modifications, or you can deny preliminary subdivision plats that are within the Heritage District. And you can review and comment on applications for zoning and general plan amendments, subdivisions, variances, and other things that are within 1,000 feet of the exterior boundaries of the Heritage District. And you can conduct public hearings as required by the zoning code. You need to have meetings whenever you have something that you need to talk about that are pertaining to your powers and duties. If you don't have any items that you need to talk about, then you're not required to hold a meeting just to be holding a meeting. You do actually need to have things to talk about. So that's a pretty quick, you probably knew all this as being on the design review board, but we had some other questions in the past about what you could and could not do. So a couple of years ago, I did the same presentation, and we had questions from the commissioners on the board. And I have those same questions here tonight, and we're going to go through those because there are usually more things you wonder about. So one of the questions before was, what is the difference between an item on the agenda and an update? And an item on the agenda is going to be something that falls within your power and duties. It's things you can take action on. It's things you can discuss. Whereas an update is something that may come from the staff liaison. It could come from the council liaison. It could come from one of the commissioners. But it's just an update on a project. You can't discuss it. It's not something that's within your powers to do anything about. If there are requests by commissioners that are outside their powers and duties, like you might ask staff to do research on something, if it's outside your powers and duties, then they don't have to address that. If it's within your duty, the staff can work on it, and then they can come back and they can either give you an update on it, or if it's something that you need to take action on, it can be put on the agenda and you can discuss it and take action. If the public makes requests to you and it's items that are outside your powers and duties, you can direct staff to meet with the public and you can, they can address their concerns. But if it's outside the powers and duties, you can't take action. You can have staff come back and give you an update at a later time on what was discussed. Another option is if it's something that, they think is important, you can direct them to go to the town council meetings. Every council meeting, there's a section for communication with citizens, and citizens have the right to speak to council, and then council can direct staff to work with them on that item. You can ask for updates in regards to anything that's going on with the Heritage District because that's your area of coverage. But if it's outside your powers and duties, it's not something you can discuss. You can just get an update on what's happening. So presentations that are made before the commission, they might not necessarily be within your role listed in your bylaws. If it's an update, it's just going to be something that's for your information. It's not something you're going to be able to take action on. And, I had an example. Working on the redevelopment plan. As the staff starts working on the redevelopment plan, they hold stakeholders meetings. They can give you updates on the process and what they're doing. Once they're done with that and they've started, developing the plan and it comes to you, at that time it becomes something within your powers and duties and it'll be an agenda item that you can discuss and you can vote and take action. You don't have to hold a meeting if you don't have anything to discuss. You can just post that your meeting has been canceled. You can hang a notice on the door, and you don't have to hold a meeting. And then finally, I believe this is my last one, there is a state statute that says an agenda for a meeting must be posted within 24 hours of the meeting. The agenda has to state where the meeting's going to be held, what time it's going to be held at, and it needs to have a list of the items that are going to be discussed or voted on. There's no requirement that an agenda packet be posted. For the town council, it's been the practice that we do post the packet for the council meetings a week ahead of time, but that's not a requirement in state law. It is a requirement that the packet be available to citizens, but it doesn't have to be available before the meeting. So they can do a public records request and request the information that is given out to you, like this PowerPoint. Someone can request a copy of this PowerPoint after the meeting, and we have to provide it. But it's not something that has to be in a packet that's posted before the meeting. So that is the end.
Would either of our two commissioners like to ask any questions? Take this opportunity to do so.
Through the chair, I have one question. If you would, if you give an example of a special or conditional use permit, a lot of what we do up here has to do with planning and design. So can you give an example of a special use permit that might come before us?
I think I might defer that to either our attorney or planning. Nathan, could you give an example of a special use permit? Please go up. I'm not a planner.
Special use permits specifically, I can't think of one right off the top of my head. Most use permits are conditional use permits. Like the parking garage that came before you a little while back, you made a recommendation to the Planning Commission. Special use permits are required for certain uses that they're not typical, they're not normal. A normal use permit is a conditional use permit in the town, but there are few uses that require a special use permit. I'm not sure if any of them would be permitted in the HVC though, so I have to check on that.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Tyler? Okay, cool. With that, we'll end that. Having closed item number 1, we'll move on to number 2 to approve our community meeting minutes for December 20th, 2017. Does anybody have any additions or changes that they would like to be made? Seeing none, we will go ahead and vote to approve the minutes from December 20th, 2017. Do we have a motion?
I motion to approve the minutes from December 20th, 2017.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Seeing that, those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Seeing none, we will approve those minutes from December 20th, 2017. Agenda item, administrative item number 3, community minute meetings from December 21st, 2017. Are there any additions or changes that are requested at this time? Seeing none, we will look for a motion for that.
I will make a make a motion to approve the community meeting minutes, December 21st, 2017.
Do we have a second? Seeing a second, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seeing none, the community minute meetings from December 21st, 2017 are approved. We will go ahead and close the administrative items and move on to our public hearing portion of the meeting. We will move on to our agenda item number 4, DR 17-1144, the Heritage District Parking Garage 2. If members of the public wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number. I will now open the public hearing and welcome staff to the podium to begin their presentation.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. This is DR 17-1144, as you mentioned. It's the parking garage site. This is not the use permit tonight that's labeled on there, but you recently saw the use permit application. This graphic is just a reminder of the location of the project that we're talking about. Did want to talk about timeline and steps just to try to put everything in context, so I don't want to take too much of your time up, but sometimes it's good to revisit. April of last year, the Town Council approved the concept master plan for the Heritage District 2 parking garage. And then recently, we just had their use permit approved to allow the parking facility use on the subject site. So you made that recommendation, and that went to the Planning Commission, and they approved it in December. And now what's before you tonight is the design review application, the actual site plan, landscape plan, grading and drainage, building elevations, lighting, those types of things. So that's what the request tonight is, and that's how that fits into the context of all these applications. So this is a graphic of the 1.2 acre site. You can see the yard you saw last month located to the west of it here. And then you can see the Hearn and Brycomp road improvements. Again, you're probably familiar with a lot of this. The access points, the main access point is off of Vaughn Avenue. Valet will be, for the yard and such, will be located along Hearn Way there, and a secondary access point to the garage on the west side. That'll be open to the public after hours, but will be valet during normal business hours. And so you can see all these improvements that are associated with the property and the surrounding areas that'll be constructed at the same time of the parking garage. This is just an enlargement of it that you can kind of see those improvements and how the garage fits on the site, basically filling out the entire site. And then this is a graphic I wanted to share with you, the bike parking. This, the Brycomp alignment and the connection to the canal to the north, that's a power line trail corridor, is anticipated to be a main bikeway and pedestrian way for, folks to come into the downtown off of Gilbert Road. So this graphic shows you where all the off-site and on-site bike parking will be with the parking garage and with the Hearn and Brycomp improvements. Those are right-of-way improvements, so they're just a capital improvement project. But you could see there's over 90 bike parking spaces that will be provided with these improvements to the area. Because of that, we anticipate this being a major multimodal transportation corridor into the downtown to get things off of Gilbert Road. You see people riding bikes on sidewalks and things like that, so hopefully that'll help to alleviate some of that. This is the landscape plan. You can see on the actual site itself, a lot of the improvements, the hardscape and the landscape will be done with the Hearn and Brycomp improvements that are part of that CIP project. But on site, you can see there's a 10-foot landscape setback on the east that's required by code that they're providing, and you can see the trees and shrubs and those types of things that'll be provided. And then I also wanted to revisit the elevation. So that was the main issue that you had last time you saw this. The folks that were here in October of last year, obviously a cast-in-place building. The town decided to go with the cast-in-place building, and previously it was mostly concrete painted and a few items with the clock tower. Since then, there's been a lot of work going on within the town and with the applicant to improve the elevations of the building, and staff believes the architects and the applicant has done a great job of that. You can see some significant changes to the clock tower, a number of different materials and colors that are provided that create different building masses and articulation to the west side and the south side, especially, and some of the north. This is going to be two different kinds of brick material. It's actual brick, not a veneer. So there's a heritage blend and a platinum blend that's a gray. Let me provide that graphic. This is an enlargement of the clock tower. You can kind of see those materials a little bit better. But overall, Staff feels that they've done a really good job of articulating the building. From what we saw at the study session in October, this is an elevator and the clock tower. And one, they provided this metal screening there to the front of it, so kind of create transparency, but also allow shading and things like that of the west facing for the sun. They have some renderings here. You can see from the west elevation. You can kind of see the brick going up to the second deck. It kind of gives that mass and yet pedestrian scale to the building, which is nice. And then this is a viewpoint from Vaughn Avenue looking northeast, and this is the main entry here into the garage. And then here's some graphics of the evening, what it'll look like. They want to, part of the proposal is having uplighting and lights to wash the building, and you can change colors and those types of things. And then this is the colors and materials. You can see the brick there on the lower left, and just a lot more colors, materials, texture, and massing to the building now than what we saw last time. And this is just a floor plan to kind of show you examples of how folks will come in off of Vaughn and enter the garage, and where parking spaces will be in the layout. So staff recommendation is for approval with the subject conditions here. And with that, I take any questions or comments.
Yeah, I know we gave you guys some grief in October, but I have to say I'm really pleased with the work that you guys did, and sitting down with us. I know I offered some changes and suggestions, and I can see that they're reflected there. So I just want to say I really appreciate the work that's been done on the parking garage. I think it's going to be a great fixture of our community, and I know a lot of effort's gone into putting this together. So I just want to lead off with that. I did have a question, though, as I was reading through the packet on the video board display.
Yeah.
I noted that it says that however, as this time, the technical details and feasibilities of the potential feature are still being determined. I was interested to see what the particulars are on that. Is that like, 50-50 we may have that? What's kind of the particulars there?
May let our economic development liaison field that one.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we are working through all of the details on that, particularly as it relates to a potential partnership that would help us fund that type of display. With that said, we are building in the opportunity to add the display to the garage as soon as we have such funding in place.
Okay, so it's just a funding thing, not like a technicality thing. Cool. Are there any commissioners this time that would like to ask any questions of staff?
Yeah, through the chair, I've got a couple of questions. I'm not sure if staff would like me to ask them first or one by one. I've got a couple different questions. What would be easier?
Maybe one at a time would be easier.
So the first thing, I don't know if it's a required condition, but I noticed on the second floor, the floor plan that's before us for approval, it looks like the handicap spots are properly drawn out on the second floor. They're just not indicated, like the third floor with the accessibility icon. So I didn't know if that was something that we could, add on here just to make sure that those are handicap spots.
I would say, answer your question, absolutely, yeah. My understanding is they will have accessible spaces on each floor, similar to every floor plan, every first, second, third, and so forth. So if that's something that's missing, or if I'm wrong and they're not going to have them on the second floor, that would be news to me. But go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Sue Gray, architect on the project. Thank you for having us here. There will be accessible parking on the second, third, and fourth. There will not be on the top floor. And we do have a striping plan, and all those details are in the construction documents, so it will be designated.
So while it's not on here, it's not to be concerned. I guess the question is, with 600 spots, is there enough handicap? And with that question, I was looking at the first floor of 90 plus spots. There are some handicap spots there, but are those for valet only? Or could someone that's not valeting their car, if you're a handicapped patron coming to the town, could you park there?
Some are designated for valet, and they do comply with what the requirements are for valet parking, and some are in the public area, and then they're at the second, third, and fourth levels near the elevator. So we do have the required count, and they will be provided and signed according to all the codes and requirements.
Great. So I had a question about the valet. Having gone to the culinary dropout and the other sandbox concepts, it seems to be valet is a daily, almost a daily occurrence. And so does the town, or is it too early to discuss, is this first floor going to be a daily valet operation? And if so, how does that affect the flow of cars, coming in and out if you're not using valet? I didn't know if this was too early to ask this question, but just mainly it's a parking question that has to do with the use of valet.
And I think Amanda might want to answer that, as there's a development agreement that they're working out.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I wanted to first address the use of valet within, use of accessible spaces within valet. Even if an individual would like to drive into the valet area and self-park their car in accessible spaces in valet, that is permitted by law. Can you just repeat, please, the question about the valet operation? I know you had asked, will it be a daily operation? Is that the expectation?
Correct. So looking at the ground floor plan, it looks like there is access for the South Park on the south side, and the valet is traveling north and coming in from the west side. So I guess if there were non-valet days, is there access to the parking structure through the valet entrance as well as the other, or is it strictly for valet only? I'm sure there'll be signage accordingly. The main question is it going to be a daily use of valet? And I guess people knowing which way to go will be indicated by signage, just making sure people know and what that looks like.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner Shaka. The intention is that it will be daily valet operation, and in our development agreement with Common Bond, it is designated as such. And so therefore, the wayfinding within that area will ensure that people know that that entrance is for valet as opposed to the self-park entrance.
Perfect. So through the chair, another question I have, a lot of other towns and cities compliment the town of Gilbert on the use of the parking structure and how they've incorporated co-op trash. And so I apologize for, I wasn't at the prior meetings in October and prior. So I see a trash compactor on the southeast corner, but I was just wondering if there was any incorporation of trash. It might be too late for that, but are there considerations for that? Because it is an eyesore when these restaurants are generating a lot of trash. It's a sign of success, but it's also not very pretty.
Right, so, thank you, Commissioner. This is the location of the compactor, so all the businesses in this area are going to utilize this. I believe the yard, OSO, everyone will be bringing their trash to this compactor for the area, so you won't see roll-off bins or anything like that anywhere in the Hearn or Brycomp area. It'll all be this centralized compactor location.
And one other follow-up question to that, how do you envision, or which direction would the employees be traveling to take bags of trash? Would it be along the north side? Is there a walkway there? Making it friendly, a bag breaks halfway on the way to the trash area. I was just wondering if there's a path for employees to take the trash to that area.
Commissioner, this would be, OSO will likely, there is no path on the east side or north side, so they'll take the path of least resistance, which will be back a house for the yard will be on the east side, and I'm sure they'll just travel down the east side of Brycomp, and then OSO would just come across the Brycomp and get to it at this location. Future development would do the same. They would just walk across and use the walkways to get to it. But there's nothing on the east or the north that would access the compactor.
So unlike a mall situation where there might be HOAs or property owners, or there's some kind of CC&Rs where people have to follow how they take care of their trash and clean up, I guess the question is self-policing, right? So it's more of a question of making sure, if trash does spill, what happens? I don't think it's a town's responsibility to babysit that, but it's just a question going forward. There is no trash on site. In a lot of commercial properties, that is a requirement. This is the uniqueness of the downtown Gilbert. So it's more of a food for thought than a question.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Shaka, we really appreciate that insight. And one of the things we did in the year prior was meet with all of the merchants in the area to talk about trash and how we would create a uniform methodology across the board. And so right now we're actually meeting with our environmental services team, and we have another meeting coming up next week to continue moving forward with what that program looks like. I know one of the things that they had suggested to help with alleviate some of the dragging of trash bags and such as trolleys, which can be associated with the trash compactors. And then you'd put your bags into the trolleys and push your trolleys down so you don't get, the bags snagging on the ground and such. So we are certainly working through that program, and our hope is to have that comprehensive program completed by the end of this fiscal year.
That's great. Thank you. And then two other last questions, sorry. One is, I love the percentage of the 90 bicycle parking spots. You have 90 valets, so it's about a 15% compared to the total number of cars that can park there. So as far as the electric, it seems to be there's a trend, more people buying electric vehicles. Is there enough spots for that? And that always can be changed later. And is there any power supply for those electric vehicles on, I think it's the second floor. I think there's 6 spots for that.
I'll answer that for you. Yes, there are, right now we have currently 6 on the second floor, and our parking consultant, they do analysis on that and what the trend rates are for the number of electric vehicles that are currently out on the street. And then we have projections and electrical capacity to expand up to 30 in the future. So they can accommodate that.
Perfect. And the last question, sorry, thank you, Chair, is the notification. So all the neighbors, property owners and apartment dwellers, I was curious about the notification process. Mainly, if I was living in the apartments to the east, making sure that the setbacks have been, they are being properly adhered to. But just, was there any questions from any apartment dwellers or property owners adjacent to the east of this garage? Was my final question.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Shaka, I have not received any questions. I don't believe planning or our consultants have, and we certainly sent out, all of the notices within the area for not only the public hearing, but also the use permit as well.
Thank you.
And during the master plan, notifications were sent out, and there's been discussions too about the contractor putting some notifications out and for adjacent property owners, just to let them know when things are going to start to happen.
Thank you.
I'll just say I'm really glad we've got a trash compactor over there, because it's going to be a vast improvement from what we've had in the past, and that's going to be really awesome to have, especially with how much business those guys do over there. Any other commissioner questions?
Yeah, Chair, I had just a couple of questions. One, on the electric cars, I'm glad to hear from Commissioner Shaka that can be expanded easily. I think that will be a trend, and we will want to potentially add more of those. My other just comment was on the rendering. So the clock tower itself, it just, if we're going to go to the trouble of doing a clock tower, it seems difficult to even interpret that from any sort of distance with this gray on gray kind of scheme going. So just my own personal opinion is, if we're going to go to the trouble and cost of doing a clock tower, let's make it worth it where people can actually see it. So I don't know if that's already set in stone or not, but maybe any way to make that a little bit more visible.
The clock will have, it will be illuminated, so in the evening it will be even more visible. And I think we're going through and doing a lot of the detailing right now on that, so we can provide you some additional information or renderings if you'd like.
Any other questions? Staff, if we do get additional renderings, does that cause any more process moving forward? How does that look for us?
Mr. Chairman, you can make a motion tonight either way, and we can still provide details as we progress.
Fantastic. Okay, with that, thank you, staff. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on item number 4 this time? Seeing none, I see a hand back there from a little girl. Seeing none, if there are no other public comments, do we have a motion to approve the findings of fact and approve of DR 17-1144 Heritage District Parking Garage number 2?
I'll move to approve the findings of fact and approve DR 17-1144 Heritage District Parking Garage 2.
Is
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Seeing none opposed, this motion passes. This now concludes the public hearing portion of the agenda. We will now move into our communication section. At this time, the chair has no communications to present, so we'll go ahead and move forward to our council liaison report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I have to report tonight is we'll have a 5th member of this commission the 1st of next month. We have some interviews that are scheduled. We've had 15 applicants, so we've got some good qualified applicants, and so we should have a full board.
Dang. All right, report from commissioners on current or future events. Seeing none, report from our staff liaison.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I just wanted to note that January 30th, we will be holding the public meeting for the options for our master plan. So there are 2 options that will be brought before the public. That meeting will take place at 6 o'clock in the university building, and our staff member will send out a notice to all of you. And if you'd like to attend, we just ask that you let us know in advance so that we can properly notify the public if we have a quorum.
Okay, having finished all the communications, we are now adjourned. Thank you, guys.